Hello, this is Brett Rentmeester, President of Windrock Wealth Management. Today we are thrilled to have a special guest with us who is one of the foremost experts on trend forecasting and someone whose work we follow very closely. Our guest is Gerald Celente, publisher of the TrendsJournal, quarterly publication focusing on global economics, geopolitics, and a range of other topics, which can be found at www.trendsjournal.com. Gerald has boldly forecast many of the biggest economic events and trends over the last 25 years, while the mainstream media continues to be blindsided by these unfolding events. Gerald, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Brett.
Just by way of background, we founded Windrock Wealth Management on the belief that the economic path ahead would be one of the most difficult investors have seen, and one where conventional stock and bond portfolios would fail to protect investors. And we saw almost nobody else in the wealth management industry talking about, much less addressing, the issues we're going to discuss today. Not only is the mainstream missing the bigger storyline unfolding, but they've consistently missed prior financial bubbles, falling back on common defenses like markets are efficient and no one could see it coming. So given this mainstream belief that you can't see things coming, I'd like to begin by quoting your winter 2014 Trends Journal, where you stated, "Forecasting trends requires knowledge of the past and understanding of the present in order to anticipate the future." Gerald, please take us through your perspective on the art of trend forecasting and why the mainstream media always seems to miss the mark.
Whether it's in economics or geopolitics, social change, environmental, you name it, they miss the mark because most of the time, as I see it, they have a stake in the game. So if we're going to talk about the media, who's it owned by? A handful of companies. So it's basically an oligarchy, but we call it the communications media. And they're selling product. And they're selling the belief that you should do what they tell you and you'll live a better life. That's the subline under it all, that they know best, they have the best experts. But again, whether it's in economics, look what's going on now with the Iraq War. And again, we forecast it would happen exactly the way it is happening and unfolding. Before it began, I did an op-ed piece for all of Gannett News, outlining that the United States would have a swift battlefield victory, that would devolve into a civil war, and Americans would leave after they've lost too many men, too much money, or the will to keep fighting. Here we are, but now they're bringing back the same experts that didn't see it coming, saying what they should do next. And I'm bringing that up because whether it's in the economy, geopolitics, as I said, you name the field, everybody that's commenting on it usually has a stake in the game. And I'm a political atheist. I look at things the way they are, not the way I want them to be. I'm not an optimist or a pessimist. Those are values. You could be the greatest optimist in the world. And let's say your name is Dr. Brett. And a patient comes into you, and you see that this person only has a few, they're rotting away of cancer or whatever. Optimism doesn't play a part in that. Facts do. So we only look at the facts that are available, and we try to get them from as many divergent sources and disparate sources as possible. And then we put them together, and we look at it socially, economically, and politically. All things are connected. So when you talk about in the beginning in your introduction about, wealth management, and then you start putting the pieces together. Let's just look at the news. Oh, I didn't know this. Central banks have invested nearly $30 trillion in the equity markets. I wonder why. I couldn't be because those interest rates in here are zero, but now you have negative interest rates in Europe, in the ECB. So where are they going to put their money? And then they write that the IMF is now forecasting that the United States economy is not going to grow at nearly the 3% rate this year as they had forecast, but a 2% rate. And, quote, the economy is stalled. Excuse me, the economy has lost momentum. It never had momentum. All it had was cheap money. But nobody wants to call it what it is because they all have a stake in the game. And they want the Ponzi scheme to keep going so they could keep reaping the riches. It's never been like this before. The interest rates are unprecedented in recorded history. No one has ever seen this before. So are they going to say it's going to end ugly? No.
And speaking of ending ugly, I'd also like to take you back in time a bit to what you were saying leading up to the last collapse in '08. And really, as early as '04, you started talking about, in fact, these are your words, the Great Recession, as it would become known by 2007, will maintain its grip for at least a generation. So you identified it early, and then kind of on the eve of the collapse, before anything had happened in December of '07, you warned of the panic of '08, failing banks, busted brokerages, toppled corporate giants. Whatever the spark, the stage is set for panic in the streets. Gerald, these comments are like reading an article looking back at '08, and in fact, they were your projections before '08. What did you see leading up to '08 that got you so concerned?
Well, what happened was that people forget the dot-com bubble burst in March of 2000. And again, we had forecast that as well in October of 1999. We called it dot-com bust. We said it would break by the second quarter of 2000. What convinced us that we saw that the whole e-commerce world was much smaller than they were pretending it to be. And we knew it was going to break apart because you had these scams going on with no business plans, no models, people not making money, and the market just booming, the dot-com market. So then, you have what? March of 2000, April, May, June, July, August, September. That's 6 months. And then you had 9 months after that, 9/11. People forget the United States was in a severe recession. When George Bush, on September 8th, a poll came out. He only had, remember, he was just elected, he just took office in January. Now it's September. His approval rating was only 51%. The country was going down really fast. And 9/11 happened. They started to lower interest rates to 46-year lows. And they reinflated the bubble before it had a real chance to deflate. And they call this capitalism, and it's not. The merger of state and corporate powers, by definition, according to Mussolini, is called fascism. Too big to fail, there's no such thing in capitalism. Bailing out financial institutions, car companies, favored friends, that's fascism. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. It's not a revolving door of politics and government and corporations. It's corporations are in charge. Look where the money comes from. And look at what the senators and congressmen get it from. This guy, Eric Cantor. He reminded me of those old enough to remember Eddie Haskell on Leave It to Beaver. The guy with the brown noser who knew nothing. And you see where he got all his dough from. And you see the people's reaction to it. They're fed up with it. And that's why he lost. I mean, it was a big secret. He lost because he's a lying little jerk. That's a flunky for the financiers. So you can see it all happening, but nobody wanted to call it what it was. So then when they started raising interest rates, they had to, just like they're going to have to do it again, that's when we knew the bubble was going to pop. And you could pick up the Financial Times this week, and you will see the stories about all of the borrowing going on, the mergers and acquisitions, and the bundling of all of these exotic financial instruments that are reminiscent to the crash of 2008, the panic of 2008. They're doing it again. And you know what line they use to justify it? This time there are safeguards in place. What am I, 6 years old? Who are you BSing? Tell this to your Economics 101 course, professor. Don't tell me. But that's what they keep saying. There's no protection out there. They're doing the same gambling. All this is criminality. It's gambling. And no one wants to call it what it is. They're not investment banks. They're casinos that gamble. So when we saw this happening, it was very clear, and you can see it happening again. This thing is going to collapse when interest rates go up. It's an interest rate recovery, period, paragraph. And if you don't believe me, ask the $30 trillion that the central banks, including China, have invested in the financial sector, because they can't get it. They can't get any return on their money any other way.
Yeah, and it's really a scary backdrop for investors, and so many people want to believe, the economy's back and things are going to be like they used to be. Gerald, I want to pick up on something you talked about recently this year. I'm going to quote a couple words again and just have you continue the story now of what lies ahead. You said, "We anticipate the Federal Reserve will decelerate its bond buying spree," which they have. "As this once-in-a-lifetime cheap money spigot slows, so too will global economies." Then you went on to say, "We fully expect the Fed and other central banks to institute some type of new money flows into the system after initial rounds of tapering prove too damaging to equity markets and economies." Can you elaborate now, taking us from this point forward, on what you see ahead, not only this year, but as this continued credit story plays out?
Well, yes, you're seeing it already. When we wrote that, there was no such thing as negative interest rates. And now you have them in Europe. And now also they have another long-term refinancing operation. They put a T in front of it this time. And what it means is they're dumping about $500 billion and making it available to to many of the banks in Europe to keep this thing going. So the tapering, when you saw the first round of tapering start to hit, and you saw the financial markets, particularly the emerging markets, go into cardiac arrest, because all that hot money that was flowing out from the cheap money from the interest rates was going into the carry trade into the other countries and boosting them up. So now with the tapering, the money flow is slowing. And now you're seeing the same thing in China. It's no different, just the language is different. China kept saying they weren't going to boost the economy with government money. And they're doing the exact opposite. They're boosting the economy with government money. They have empty cities virtually. They have an oversupply of real estate, and prices are going down. You know what China's greatest fear is? It's not Japan with this island dispute, or Vietnam, or the Philippines, or America's pivot to Asia. China's greatest fear is its people. They got 1.2 billion of them. And I don't care how big your army is. And these people have been around a long time. And they don't, if anybody's ever dealt with the Chinese, man, just on a social basis, you go, they'll push you around. They don't care, because that's the way they're used to being around. They got a lot of people, and they got to make room for themselves. They have to fight for their territory. And they're having big problems already in the western regions that consider themselves more of, Turkmenistan than China. So what I'm saying is China's doing everything they can to quell any kind of disturbances in that country. So what they're doing differently, however, is that the trillions of yuan that they're spending, they have this distorted view of the world. They put the investments back into their own country, unlike the United States that uses the money to wage wars and give it to other countries. China keeps the money at home. Isn't that a crazy concept? How dare they, when they should take their people's money and give it to other countries and waste the money on fighting losing wars? As America fights wars, China builds their economy. So when we keep going back to the carry trade, this is hurting everybody. So they're keeping interest rates low. They don't know what to do next. China keeps saying they're going to pull back on the money flow, and they keep doing the opposite. They don't know what to do either. Europeans don't know what to do. I love this. This is the headline last week, and not the headline, but a major story in the Financial Times. The new finance minister of Greece said that they're coming out of recession. They're anticipating a 0.5% GDP growth next year. 0.5% GDP growth. You're coming at, number one, it's not a recession, but everybody calls it over there a recession. It's a full-blown depression in Greece, in Spain, in Ireland, the unemployment rates, youth unemployment in Italy is 40%, Portugal. But anyway, going back to Greece, they call it a recession. These are depressions. And no, if you have a 0.5% increase in GDP, that's like me saying to you, you know, I'm $1 million in debt, but I just have 0.5% of it I paid off. So I'm on the road to recovery. That's how stupid that is. But that's how they put it into that context. So that when we're looking at the whole global situation, it's every country's involved in this because of multinationalization. And by the way, I believe there's a way out of this. And I believe it comes with building, you know, homegrown economies, you know, just self-sustaining economies, actually. And we're a country of 316 million people. You think we could make our own shoes, shirts, and socks and sell them to each other? Is that such a foreign concept? Yeah, I love the logo. I love it. I hate it. The logo of Walmart, save money, live better, or something like that. No, make money and live better. Saving money. You know, save money. What are you saving? You're saving a couple of pennies and buying junk from another country? So you need self-sustaining economies, and it all ties together once again by the tapering and going back to why these other countries are going to fail. I mean, why is Brazil booming? Why? Look at Australia. I mean, look at the downslope Australia's on. They got away. They missed the Great Recession because of the dominance of China buying up their natural resources. Same with Brazil. Same with Peru. Same with Chile. And now they're buying up a lot less, and these economies are going down. And again, it goes back to the carry trade again with the cheap money. So it's all connected.
And Gerald, you alluded to this, but you've got incredible youth unemployment around the world, which anybody that studies history knows that's a recipe for bad things. And you've spoken at pretty great lengths about the Millennial Generation here in the U.S., and you've described them as, quote, a generation delaying its entry into economic and self-sustaining adulthood, launching a career, marrying, buying homes, raising families. One of our worries remains this stagnant economic, growth ahead, / recession or worse, that really doesn't give the opportunity to the next generation. And that combined with printing of money and other things that may fuel inflation in harsh conditions. Tell us what you see for the millennial generation and what those trends mean for broader economic growth.
Well, I call them Generation F'd. And I say that because when you look at the numbers, I mean, when I was growing up, it was a given that my generation would do better than my parents. And the whole baby boomers were always going to do, the future was always going to look brighter than the past. And now it's the exact opposite. They don't expect the future to be better than the past. And then you look at the numbers. New home sales, about 40% of them used to be first-time home buyers, the millennial generation right now. Well, now it's down to about 26% of the new homes are first-time buyers. And then you're looking at them postponing marriage. They can't afford it. You're looking at them, who would have ever thought? When I went to school, when I went to college, it was like $2,000 a year. I think that included room and board. And now you're getting out of debt. You're what, $80, $90, $100, $120,000 in debt? You read these things? And then people marry each other and they both bring their debt with each other? Who ever heard of this? So the future is going to continue to go down. Look at the jobs that they're getting even when they go to college. Half of the jobs that they have, the ones that are employed, are either part-time or paying wages that don't require a college education. These are facts. So the country is on a very steep downward spiral. The gap between the rich and the poor is the widest of any of the industrialized nations. Median household income is below 1999 levels. And again, now you have this whole millennial generation. And what are they doing? They're moving in with their parents. And again, I wrote about this in Trends 2000 in 1996. I call it the re-extended family. You can see it coming. But now there's another twist that I missed. And that is is that the parents now want them to live there because they can't afford to stay there. Because the parents are losing their jobs. You have to pay these moronic state and school taxes that are off the charts. I mean, when is it enough to stop paying school taxes? And how old do you have to be to stop paying for somebody else's kid to go to school? You know, I mean, enough is enough. It's not equitable. And now you're an elderly person. You all you have is Social Security. There's no pensions and benefits anymore. So they want the kids to move back in so they can keep their homes. But even that's hardly working. So the millennial generation, they're also going to, if they had it in them, and I see a good number of them that do, but I have to tell you that this country, its cultural fight is down. The needle is down near zero. You know, again, if I grew up now, I would have been whacked out on Ritalin. They would have said there was something wrong with me to tame me. So when you look at the mind control of what's happened to the society, look at the obesity problem we have, and read about it. What are people looking for this? Oh, it's hard. I like to go on a diet, but it's hard. Is there a pill I can take? I'm not making that up. I mean, it's what they say. They want a quick solution. So what I'm saying to you is the millennial generation should be the generation that's leading the charge for change. And they just don't have that fighting spirit. They showed some of it with the Occupy Wall Street. You know, God bless them. They were out there and they put themselves out in the line. But then it died. There was no focus to it. Matter of fact, we're coming up with one ourselves. We're calling it Occupy Peace. And we're putting it into anyone would like to sign up. It's occupypeace.us. This is only for Americans. I'm here in colonial Kingston, New York. More colonial buildings, pre-Revolutionary War buildings than anywhere else in the United States. And the only intersection where there's a pre-Revolutionary War stone building on each corner. And the founding fathers, from Washington's farewell address to Hamilton, Franklin, Jefferson, you go right up and down the names. No foreign entanglements. So it goes back to a self-sustaining economy. They're talking about, again, the Iraq War, $1 trillion. Could you imagine what $1 trillion would have done for this country? I mean, you're looking at the whole now road infrastructure repair, a big deal. The government just announced they're spending $20 billion. And then you read into it, $20 billion over 10 years. Wow, that's what would call me sporty. And then what did they cost? You know what it cost us to train these losing troops over in Iraq to defend themselves, the Iraqi government troops, just like they're doing in Afghanistan? $20 billion. No, excuse me, I think it's $17 billion that they're going to spend on infrastructure repair in the United States. There were numbers in that category, but $20 billion just wasted on aid overseas. Could you imagine if we closed all the bases, brought the troops back home, and had a defense force rather than an offensive force going into foreign countries? So where's the millennial generation? So they have no future. It's not, where are they going to get a job? At Staples? How about Walmart's? Maybe Target's? Maybe, if you work your way up, you can become a manager of Olive Garden. You don't like that? Maybe we can get you become a barrister and work your way up to a senior barrister at Starbucks. There you go.
Gerald, thank you so much for your time today. Can you tell our listeners how they can learn more about the Trends Journal?
Sure, TrendsJournal.com, TrendsJournal.com. And by the way, we do Trends in the News each weekday, and it's about a 20-minute show. The real news going on, not, did they find that Malaysian airplane yet? How about those Kardashians? Boy, I'll tell you that Justin Bieber, you got to straighten out. You won't hear any of that.
Thanks again, Gerald. We appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you.